Good afternoon, good evening. Let me start by thanking Brad and the team at Webb for a really excellent conference presented over the last 2 days. We had great content, we had in-depth content, industry speakers from around the globe joining us here, and that is really special, and I hope we see more of those. So Brad, Mike, thank you very much for all of that work. Let me introduce myself a little bit. My name is Martecchini. I started as president of Webb in July of this year, following a almost 40-year career with Stoll Tankers. I was working in Connecticut, Houston, and Rotterdam, 15 years over in Holland. And what I can see is there's been a huge shift. So I saw it even before I came here, this tremendous shift in what the market expects of us, or what the market expects of the maritime industry. And so that is what we are working with today. It's a challenge, but a tremendous opportunity as well. Now, we covered in the last 2 days, we had a lot of good discussions. For example, fuel types, how they're produced, the various supply chains needed to make them happen, how different engines or consumers could use these fuels, how the power is distributed around the ship, and the impacts on the hull design itself. Volume, weight, and location all can change radically with these new fuels. And certainly in my business, we had tankers. It was always a high block coefficient, low L over B ship, but maybe that ship is going to sail over the horizon, as we heard, to get down to better performing and lower carbon producing consumptions going forwards. There is 1 million different appendages on the market that can help us on the way to get us to our required EEDI and CII factors. Just a small caution, they will each promise you at least 3%, but get 10 of them times 3% will not get you 30% in savings, I guarantee you that. So do your research, do your towing tank models effectively before you buy all of those. Operational measures, an important part of what we're going to be doing and have to do. This gets us into a very interesting area, which is about human behavior. And any of us who have been working in the ship operating world, human behavior and safety behavior becomes a hugely critical factor to consider, and no less here when it comes to energy management and achieving our sustainability goals. Regulatory misalignment, some interesting ideas about we've gotten off track in the regulatory world about where we have to get to. That's been a bugaboo of mine for many years. This is about aspirational rulemaking. People have an idea for what they would like to have in a rule without really understanding what it takes to get to that goal. And we often find sub-optimized or poorly optimized decisions made along the way. We heard a little bit about wind today, a lot of new ideas coming in wind. First of all, offshore development in the Northeast here, a lot of money going in, a lot of real estate deals being done to support offshore wind, a lot of offshore support vessels needed there as well. It was interesting to me with the various wind ideas to see the one comparison that you can use wind directly with your various means, whether they be wings or sails or various things attached to the ship, versus producing electricity from wind, converting it to a fuel, getting that fuel on the ship, and then finally consuming it. That losses along that chain were in the order of 90%. I thought that was really interesting to see that comparison when we design supply chains about how inefficient certain fuel impacts can be at the end of the day if we start from the same source. And of course, I think, wind, if we start to focus on priority areas and lanes, is where the action is going to be. Maybe in the transatlantic area we found at Stoll was the most promise, but maybe other areas not quite so much. And I had never heard until this session about a carbon battery with a very interesting design about how to reuse carbon in a methanol cycle, which was quite intriguing. But I think we need really more discussion, some of the big challenges, which maybe we didn't have enough time to tackle at this session here. And I think the biggest that comes to mind, of course, we've heard of the chicken and egg challenge. I call it wrong way risk. And we see, for example, the LNG fuel supply chain, many ships built today or in the last number of years with LNG dual fuel, and yet none of them are actually consuming LNG today, except LNG carriers, because the price of LNG has skyrocketed. I just read in the paper today that orders for methanol fuel ships have overtaken the orders for LNG fuel ships just this month in October. So, all of those invested big bucks in LNG, is that the right choice or not? So I think the key is, and maybe this is something in our engineering teaching, rather than design for, a goal, it's designing for flexibility, something, and considering economic flexibility is something that we have to keep high on our list of desires or needs. And then the funding efforts to make this all happen, Paulo Almeida in the keynote address yesterday did address some aspects of how we can manage the cost to implement these very expensive options and share that with the partners in the supply chain, whether it's those that produce the ships, those that operate the ships, those that charter the ships, or ultimately the consumer at the end of the chain. But when we look at really the amount of money that has to go into research here to develop these new techniques, the new engines, the new fuel chains, I'm really worried that the efforts are far too fragmented still. Yes, you can get government grants. They're a little hard to get, and they tend to be a little scattershot, a little bit onerous to comply with them. There are companies and industry coalitions that are working hard on trying to get the money together to make some of this work go on. But is the amount available anywhere near enough? And the big issue also with those is the intellectual property that's produced. Is it public to be shared, or is it to be hoarded amongst individual companies for profit, which is the capitalist model? And some of those challenges I think we still need to work on. My feeling, if I could be a little crude in how to say it, when it comes to funding, we're a little bit pissing into a hurricane here to get the money together needed to make the changes we're talking about here. And finally, education. This is where we are here at Webb. This is our goal. It was interesting to hear Sergio's comments at the end about some of the students that he's encountering, being doubtful about sustainability and what it's about and the need for it. All I can say is there's a huge economic imperative you can see, because the industry, this is a freight train going full speed in that direction. It's going to impact the fuel costs that people have going forwards, strategic decisions on what kind of ships we build, and job opportunities are going to be directly linked to that. So you can doubt the science, but that train is underway, it's going full speed, and if you're not on it, you're going to lose out at the end of the day. So I urge Sergio, your students, to get that message at least. It was interesting being in this prospective freshman interview process. Unfortunately, I missed many of the sessions because I was going through a stream of interviews. Interesting to see the new generation coming in and what they're looking for. And this is one area that I think does excite them. And if you think about educators, our goal is to inspire, is to energize, and to train the next generation of ship designers. And one of the George Williams, who's one of our professors, retired a few years ago at Webb. I met him in Houston at the SNAME conference, and he said, look, our job is not to fill empty containers. Speaking of students, it's to provide the spark that lights the fire for their desire to learn and move out into the world, whether it's further education, whether it's in the working world. So that's our job as educators. And the way I see it, there are three areas under the umbrella of innovation that we can use to light that fire. Certainly in sustainability, about what this conference is today or yesterday, is for me the main one and the most tangible. But of course, if you look at two other areas, autonomous ships and autonomy or automatic operations is a strong one as well, and certainly a lot of work going in there. And then big data, and these all supplement each other and will be important planks in sustainability as an activity going forwards. So at Webb, what are we doing here? Well, first of all, we first thought we would start up a research center that would be focusing on sustainability. It was not really, we thought, at the end of the day, the right time to do that. Requires a big capital investment up front. The market today, the investment market, I should say, which impacts our endowment, is rather unfriendly, as those of us who have 401ks or 403bs will know. So we took a bit of a different tack. We are adding a faculty resource that will be able to, of course, spend some time teaching, but having a main plank in this area with a lot of the new ideas really aren't even in the curriculum today because it's happening today, in the engine design shops, in the shipyards, amongst the various people doing it in the world. So, we think to bring in a regular series to work with students, a regular series of speakers and industry professionals to work with students to give them immediate hands-on exposure and impact in that area. We have a lot of activities that we're doing on a partnership basis that we believe are necessary. We have joined at Webb the Blue Sky Maritime Coalition, which is one of the US-based organizations that is going to focus on a lot of efforts in this area. We are going to be discussing with overseas partners as well about what we can do to work with them and for them to work with us, because we have great capabilities at the school, professionals, naval architects, marine engineers who can contribute in that area and bring students into this teaching cycle that we need to support. And we can see a lot of development initiatives. You can imagine many student theses that will be great opportunities for them to branch off of this activity. And then finally, to coordinate all these great conferences that we need to keep going in the future and do more of, and to make sure that we have a good inventory of all of the planks that we need to get into our curriculum, as Matt had been mentioning in the curriculum review. So there's a lot of activities here, and we need more resources to look at that. And that, for me, is very exciting and interesting to see when I discuss this with all those prospective freshmen coming through and talking to the student organization as a whole. There's a heck of a lot of excitement about that. So, we have to now make that excitement or take that excitement and turn it into them, turn it into opportunities for students so they can go out into the world and whether it's into research, whether it's into the job market, whether into ship owning, into various design shops, to make that into reality. So I think this is a great kickoff for this season here. Again, thanks to Brad, Mike, and the team here at Webb to make it happen. And I wish you all the best until the next such session that we can put forward. So thanks again.